morning, everyone. I hope that this wet and soggy weather finds you well. Let me tell you what's going on here at Studio C at Channel 5. Morton Downey has not showed up here at our studios. We actually have no idea where he is, nor does his executive producer. Apparently, his plane from California last night went down, not literally, but in Detroit, because of the weather, I suppose. At any rate, we really hope that he will show up. I don't guarantee you that to make you stay tuned. We're just hoping, and everyone's here to meet him, right? Right. How many of you are here because you like what he does on television? More. How many of you are here because you don't? All right. What don't you like? Stand up. I don't want to start with a negative, but since you're outnumbered here.
Well, I think that he perpetuates rowdiness in the crowd, which tends to perpetuate violence, and I don't like the way he treats people.
Do you particularly, do you think he treats women worse than he treats men?
No, I think he treats them equally as bad. I think he's rude to both.
Do you watch?
Yes, I do.
Isn't that amazing? You don't like it, but you watch it. How about you? Stand up for a second. What do you think?
I think he's sort of like the fat lady at the circus, you know. He's grotesque, he's repulsive, he's everything you hate, but you got to see him for yourself, you know. And I do watch him.
How do you feel when you watch him and you get angry?
I feel angry, you know, I get frustrated. I want to yell at him, I want to strangle him, you know.
And yet some say he speaks for all of us and our frustrations on issues. Who's feeling that when they watch? Who has a sense of that? Do you? Stand up for me. What do you think?
Oh, I believe in that, yes. And I think he brings out a lot of views in people that they all have. And I think he's good for the American public in many respects.
What particular issues does he tackle that you've wanted to talk about and yell about for a long time?
Well, he had a topic the other night on bilingual language in the school system, whereas in America you should talk as an American and learn to be one. I think he's a good patriot.
We have a clip from that show later on, and you know, at one point he wouldn't let the guests talk. Do you remember him laying down on the floor saying...
Perhaps they couldn't speak English.
All right. I'll tell you, I really hope this man shows up, because he has a book that I've been reading, and I see him as a paradox in a way, and I hope that we can talk to him about all of the things that make him tick as a human being. But our phone lines are open. Obviously, we want to involve you in this because the share of the audience in Boston has just gone up dramatically. And it is an interesting kind of a phenomenon, you know, talk television. Well, it's been around for as long as we can remember, but it seems that it has absolutely changed. Only recently it became an arena of sex and sin and sleaze. From Donahue to Sally Jesse Raphael to Oprah, sensational subjects seem to be the latest rage on television.
Sometime in the near future, some husband's going to say to his wife, well, do you want to tonight? And she's going to say, well, I don't know, do you want to? And they say, well, okay. And you got to go and put in the cassette, undo the ceiling mirror, get the oils and the herbs and the spices, and then when all that fails, you plug in the good old vibrator. No kidding, can you imagine some guy after a six-pack saying, here I come, Harry?
If your father was dating or married a woman your age or younger, well, my guests today are involved in this often painful and uncomfortable love triangle. We're talking today to older men who date younger women and finding out why. You're 56?
I'm 56, I yes.
Yes, and you're dating Mika? Your name's Mika? Mika. And you're how old?
18.
How long have you been dating?
About a year.
Last year, Geraldo Rivera took tabloid television to new levels of shock and controversy. Watch this.
Incest, the dreadful taboo, the disgusting and unnatural sexual abuse of a child by his or her own parents or other grown relative. When you abused your own child, were you thinking about what your parents had done to you? When Carol Crawford was 5 years old, she was raped by her uncle. Her father started molesting her at the age of 8. Later, he became her pimp and set her to work as a prostitute.
But no doubt about it, the hottest talk show on television today turns conversation into confrontation. Combine the sexy and controversial issues of Donahue, Oprah, and Geraldo with the aggressive and often hostile style of radio shock jocks like Howard Stern and Jerry Williams, and you have Morton Downey Jr.
Things that could make you go limp in the night. English first, foremost, and forever. You don't speak it, you don't vote. Tough stuff, pal. Learn. I had a slime. like you in the White House, I'd puke on you. Murderers and drug pushers, I say hang the creeps.
What do the critics think of this latest edition of tabloid television? Is it style without substance? Is it just plain offensive? Joining us this morning are Edwin Diamond, television critic from New York Magazine. Good morning, Edwin. You are also, I should say, a survivor of Downey. We'll talk about that. And television journalist and Channel 5's critic at large, Chuck Kramer. Good morning to you, Chuck.
I'm a survivor, too. I have to watch it.
You have to watch it, all right? And Terry Ann Knopf, who is television critic for the Patriot Ledger. Good morning to you, Terry.
Good morning, and I'm a survivor, too, because I interviewed him.
You did.
Yes.
We will talk about that. Opinions on this dramatic increase in ratings in Boston. Chuck, let's start with you.
How dramatic are they, by the way?
71% since he's been on the air.
Well, I think that's cause for alarm, because watching Morton Downey, in my opinion, is, like the lady said, watching a freak show. And we watch a freak show because at some deep level of our consciousness, it makes us feel better to be not a freak, to be better than they are. And if our lives are so small that just being better than a freak, a two-headed lady, or Morton Downey Jr., if our lives are that small, what does it say about our own lives? This is a very broad condemnation of our lives, and we're going to be generalizing all day today, but it disturbs me that feeling superior to the kind of folks that appear on a lot of these reality-based shows is enough. That our lives are so limited ourselves, we think, I'm not sure it's really true, that being better than that is enough. And enough people apparently feel that way in this viewing area to make this a popular show. I think it'd be a lot more beneficial to our general mental health if we were all off not watching television at all and doing something unique, individual, instead of joining into this kind of mass psychosis of feeling superior to the freakos that appear on this kind of show often.
What about the question I posed to the audience, that this man speaks for the common man who has been frustrated a long time with some of the dishonesty in our government and some of the policies that we face in our country? What about that as a point of view?
Well, first let me disassociate myself completely from what Mr. Kramer said. The Downey show. No, I think that Downey is entertainment. We live in an entertainment society full of entertainment, and everybody is trying to differentiate themselves, to be different. There's so much on the dial. When everybody is yelling, somebody just has to yell louder. And I think there's just no connection between what goes on television and what happens in our real lives. We turn on the set, it's television. We live our own lives. So I don't really see any connection between the two.
So much of our lives are spent watching television, though.
Well, a couple of hours, but
More
more
right.
than that
The
now,
experts
two
would
hours,
disagree.
2.5 hours a day. Average person watches 2.5 hours a day. But in 1940, they listened to 2.5 hours of radio, and the brains didn't go soft. As a matter of fact, I happen to be a teacher at a university. I used to teach at MIT. Every year, the students are brighter, better. So I'm not wringing my hands about the fate of Western civilization because some guy is yelling louder on one channel. There are more channels today. There's more need to yell loud.
All right, but do you like him? As a critic, do you give him a thumbs up or down?
I don't like mud wrestling. I don't like fights at hockey games. I don't like pit bulls. I can go to the Bronx and watch two roosters claw each other. I don't happen to like it. But I don't think it's the end of Western civilization that Morton Downey is on the air, or that Geraldo today is doing, I got a list of the programs, is doing Happy Hookers, and somebody else is doing child abuse. If you look at the lineup, it's not the end of Western civilization, I don't think, that this stuff goes on the air.
Well, doing these issues on television is one thing, but doing them the way that Morton Downey, conducting them the way that he conducts them, how do you feel about that? For instance, we have a clip in a minute, but how do you feel about the times when he's rude?
Oh, the rudeness doesn't bother me. I sort of agree with a lot of what Ed has said. I think that in some ways we critics have taken him too seriously. I think that if you look at him as a showman in the same way that Jerry Williams is a showman, I think that you begin to see him in a slightly different light. And I also think, as Ed said, that we have had a proliferation of so many talk shows, and most of them, by the way, having hosts who are unabashed liberals, that there is a place for a right-wing talk show host. And,
This man
you know,
calls himself a Kennedy liberal.
today.
You bet.
He's not.
You bet. That's exactly what he says. I am a Kennedy liberal.
Actually, it's hard to believe that if you read his book. I think he said, "Show me a liberal, and I'll show you a racist."
Right.
I don't think he's a liberal. I don't. You know, if he ever comes here, we can ask him. But certainly, most of his positions on abortion, on presidential politics, would certainly suggest that he is
Well,
very much.
I'll
to
show
the
you where he says it in the book, and he said it on
Well,
Donahue
he may
as
even
well.
believe that
Yeah,
himself.
but you don't believe it.
No, he's a
I
conservative.
don't
He's a
believe it.
conservative.
You don't believe it either.
It's counter-programming, because Donahue and Oprah and Geraldo are over here to the left.
Right.
The people who brought us Morton Downey, you know, they considered Gordon Liddy for this job beforehand. I mean, they were looking for somebody to go on the right, because everybody, or a lot of the people, like Geraldo, Oprah, and Donahue, are perceived to be on the left or liberal. So how do you counter-program? How do you offer something different?
Let's keep this man's presence alive. We can do it with clips. We'll take a break, but let's go ahead and lead to the break with a clip of Morton. And he is pretty rude to this lady who claims she's a vegetarian. Take a look, and we'll be back.
You're a vegetarian, right?
A vegan.
You're what?
I'm a vegan.
A vegan?
A vegan. I abstain.
Let me hear what she has to say here. Let me hear. Go ahead. You abstain from what?
Yes, I abstain from all animal products,
All
including
animal products.
dairy and clothing.
And clothing. I eat raw hamburger.
And what is your
I eat
cholesterol?
raw fish. I smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day.
Well, can I say something?
I have about 4 drinks a day. I'm 55 years old, and I look as good as you do, Vic.
This is our live hour that we indeed planned to spend with Morton Downey Jr., and I honestly tell you that no one actually knows where he is. But before we continue our conversation with our critics, get you involved on the telephones and the audience involved, Bill Boggs, who is the executive producer of Morton's show, is on the phone. Good morning to you, Bill.
Good morning.
Where is your man?
He is in a room someplace plotting the end of Western civilization.
No, I mean, truthfully, are you a little concerned? No one's heard from him.
The last night we spoke with Mort was about 7:30 last night, when we had to cancel the show that we were going to tape in Secaucus at WWOR, and he was still on the ground in Cleveland. And at that point, I believe, I don't know if he was in touch with the people who are arranging the book tour or not.
Apparently
so
not.
I'm really not certain. I gave a call this morning because I wanted to see if I could involve him in this, but his recording machine was on. So.
Well, when you speak to him, will you tell him we all send our best?
Absolutely.
And we miss
I'm
his
sure
being
he's,
here? What does he like to work with?
Mort?
Yep.
Mort is he is not angry on the job. I mean, when he's sitting there at his desk or he's on the phone with people, he's extremely sweet, as a matter of fact. He has a good disposition, but he just has these opinions on everything. He's a very opinionated guy, and when he gets on the air, he focuses them like a laser beam, during this hour that he's doing the television show. So, there's obviously, the man is not walking around 24 hours a day like he is on television, but what you see is basically a concentrated version of his personality.
He does not express the opinions of the staff. I heard him on Donahue say that you actually often don't agree. Is that right?
The staff in Mort?
Yep.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think what I find most interesting is that the majority of people, see this show, and I kind of label the show as this right-wing show, and I think they probably think these little martinettes are working behind Mort in the office. It's just this very creative group of people who have quite divergent philosophies, politically, socially, environmentally. And so we've got people in the office who want to do shows on environment. We have people who say, who cares about it, and so forth and so on. So there's a lot of healthy conflict right in the staff.
Is Mort in any way today flying by the seat of his pants? And what I mean by that is that he's fairly new at television and admitted on the Donahue show that some of what he does is theatrics because he stores something that works back in the computer and he now can pull it out and use it. Is he feeling his way in terms of developing who he is as we speak?
Well, I think Mort basically is a natural. I think that there are some people who are able to walk out and do certain things because they just have a natural talent at doing it. He was on the radio before. He has been a stage performer. It isn't like he went from being a tradesman or an engineer on the television. So it's really a natural thing for him to do. I think what he said on the Donahue show is something that any person who's ever done any kind of performing regularly knows, that there is an aspect of reaching into a repertoire of reactions that you develop after you've done something for over a period of time, weeks or months. So he said when he first went on the air, he was 100% pure in terms of his reactions, and now maybe it's 80%, with 20% being things that he has kind of learned as a craftsman on television.
He is also very blatant about not stacking the audience. If he were...
That's quite true. The way that we get the audience is there are promos on television saying, would you like to be in the Morton Downey Show audience? You probably do a similar thing for your show. The people call, and there's a 6 or 7 month waiting list. The audience shows up, and they act that way. We obviously warm them up. We say, hey, welcome to the Morton Downey Jr. show. Let's have a good time. Let's hear some applause. But no different than any other show on television in terms of how we deal with the audience reaction.
But how you warm them up is an interesting thing. I would have asked him for a demonstration here this morning. Now,
it's no different. I've been involved with talk shows, since the early 70s in Philadelphia. Nothing is done differently with this audience than was done with the audience in Philadelphia, WCAU or KYW. You want them to relax, have a good time. Let's hear some applause. That's not enough applause. Let's do it louder. Let's give a nice welcome for our host. And they are reacting that way, Fred. The audience reaction to Morton is, to me, one of the most interesting things having to do with the program, and the thing that sets it really far apart from other shows.
well, I'm watching Ed Diamond shake his head as you are speaking, and I know you remember Bill when he was a guest on your show.
Oh, sure, I remember Ed.
Let me let Ed jump in here.
Well, Bill, come on. You warm up the guests and the audience. Peter comes out and says, now this is not McNeil Lear.
Well, that's true. He goes through that. But, Ed, I want to tell you, with all due respect, I've been in game show situations for pilots. I've hosted game shows. I've seen a lot of people do audience warm-ups. What we do to warm up our audience, in my opinion, is not significantly different than what is done to warm up any audience where the host and the producers need an enthusiastic audience.
Bill, when you did your show, Bill, did you come in with 3 beefy bodyguards?
No, those people who walk with Mort are the producers of that night's show.
Producers? Those are retired New York City detectives.
You mean the security force?
Security.
The big guys, Bill, the big guys.
Yeah, you mean that guy who's about 6'8" and very menacing looking?
Yeah, that's right. Who talks about putting you in a concrete suitcase if you don't behave.
You know,
I've never heard that line.
You send your audience through metal detectors before they actually...
That's correct. The audience does go through metal detectors, and, we picked up a lot of street weapons from the audience.
Well, they're out there. But...
So, potentially, the people who are not agreeing with Mort are going to be be subject to his fire and his ire, and to the extent you want to label some of it abuse to his abuse. 99% of the guests who come on the show are aware of what the forum is. And
it's hard to miss it.
And they walk out of the building having had a great time shaking hands and exchanging cards. The people who do the show are basically people who like the rough and tumble exchange of ideas, the yelling, the screaming, and the confrontation. It's just part of their nature. There are loads of people who don't want to do it because they're not comfortable in that format.
Chuck?
You lumped two things together there, Bill, that are astonishing. You said an exchange of ideas and the rough and tumble. Those are antithetical ideas. There is no exchange of ideas on the Morton Downey Show. No one, whether they are liberal or conservative, has more than 7.6 seconds and about 7 words to express anything. Mort will grab any opportunity to interrupt anybody because that is what the subject, and you're interrupting me now just as he does, that is what the subject of the show is, an interruption. A violent confrontation. Don't call it ideas. It has nothing to do with politics or conservatives and liberals. It's violence.
When we do shows on gun control or abortion or women in the military or the death penalty or Bush versus Dukakis or the need for English as a national language or something like killers behind bars and what should happen to them, rehabilitation of criminals, people come on the program because they want to discuss their ideas. I totally disagree with you. You're right. There is interruption. You're right. There is conflict. There's no question about it. That's what the show's all about. But you can read a transcript of the show, and you will see that there are loads of ideas put forward.
If you had a transcript of the show, you would have to have lines overlapping one on top of another. It would be impossible to read.
Bill Boggs, can we leave you on that note? And if you hear from more, would you send him up to Boston?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Bill Boggs
Thank
is the
you for
executive
inviting me.
producer of the Morton Downey Show. We appreciate you taking time this morning. Okay, let me tell you that we now would like to show you the clip that illustrates what Chuck was talking about in terms of talking over one another. Here's a clip from Morton Downey.
Let me tell you why the Cuban people have so much business and why they have been successful. Oh, do you know when they came here, we gave them $2 billion in resettlement aid. Now, Floridians didn't pay those tax dollars. You all paid for that. And if someone gave the black community
Natalie.
All right. What do you think? Ed, you're shaking your head.
If that had been a clip on Donnie, or when Bill Boggs had his own show on Bill Boggs, or on this show, you would have listened politely, nice lady trying to speak sense, and it would have been a nice mainstream reaction to a sensible comment. But Morton Downey is trying to be heard in a crowd. He's the new late arrival, and he has to be outrageous. He has to try for entertainment, and he insults this woman, just as he insulted the woman who claimed to be a vegetarian. And nobody smokes on television, right? In my state, New York State, smoking is outlawed. So what does Mort do?
He smokes.
He smokes and blows the smoke right in your face. And you remember that.
Do you know what I remember?
It's
I remember
showbiz.
the movie Network. Character stood up and said, I'm mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. And it's interesting because I think everyone has thought along the way, why did it take so long for this kind of thing to appear on television?
But you know, what I find more interesting is that the kinds of schlock TV and tabloid TV that Geraldo and Phil and especially Oprah Winfrey are doing, and Sally Jesse Raphael, which is really, to me, sleaze TV, is much more offensive than the kind of show that Mort does, where at least he is discussing, you may chant, where at least he is sort of discussing, Chuck, mostly political issues.
You always
You know?
know Mort's disgusting, and sometimes you're not sure whether they are, and that's more dangerous.
Maybe that's the distinction, but it's an interesting thing that Mort has become so controversial, while few people are talking about sort of the demise of the level of conversation on the other more mainstream talk shows. I mean, the other week, Oprah did a show on something called autoerotic asphyxiation, which is about how young teenage boys, probably it's happened twice in the country, masturbated and somehow hung themselves. This, to me, was a dangerous show, not Mort lying down and having fun with the audience.
A show for which they've apologized, by the way.
Yes.
May I pick up on something
Please.
Ed said, though, because I'm a little confused. You seem to justify Mort's approach because it's
Yeah.
good television and good show business. Does that justify ravaging a serious subject like bilingual education?
That justify. I'm trying to explain or account as a critic, or you know, a definition of a critic comes down the hill after the battle and shoots the wounded. I mean, I'm certainly not trying to justify anything. I'm like anybody else.
How many would go on the show?
Sure.
Sure, easy for you to say.
They would, I'm sure.
America is one vast television studio. That's what the Democrats proved last week, and the Republicans will prove it, and our audience today.
Well, is that why you'd be on? Because it's fun to be on television? Or do you really think you'd be able to express an idea? Both
How
are good
many think
both may be
express
good
an
reasons.
idea?
You think the idea would be heard?
No, you're not there to express an idea. What happens when a camera goes on a crowd at a baseball game or at a studio? They wave to the camera. They're not expressing ideas. They say, "Hi, Mom, I'm on television."
I submit that the appeal of the Morton Downey Jr. show to most people is so devoid of ideas and so far from the realm of real discourse that you could appreciate it if you did not speak English, had just come from Tokyo, and just sat down in Secaucus or somewhere
Absolutely.
and absorbed the gestalt of it, the yelling and the screaming.
Absolutely.
That's what the show
Absolutely.
is about.
Downey on Donahue, talking about women in the military.
Oh, shucks.
Face it, gang, all right? A woman's place these days is in the House. I mean, maybe even the Senate, all right? But now the radical feminists want to put our women in uniform on the front line. Well, baby, I don't want the only thing standing between me and a Russian tank to be a 36B cup and designer combat boots. Women in combat, next.
But if you watch Donahue, he did say the same thing. And then he went on to say, my daughter Kelly wanted to be in the Air Force. I'd love to see women in. You interviewed him, Terry. As a woman, how did he come across to you?
Oh, you mean, are you asking me, is he sexist? Of course. His book is loaded with little nuggets like, I think he called Betty Friedan the ugliest woman on the earth. He called Gloria Steinem the most dangerous woman of the 20th century. I must say, in meeting him, this was a surprise. I liked him a lot. And part of it is he is so different face-to-face, one-on-one, than he is when he is turning it on for the cameras. And he's actually a very likable, reasonable guy. One reason we were talking during the break about when he appeared on Nightline, there he was pitted against Ted Koppel, and he made mincemeat of Ted Koppel because by being calm and reasonable and I think intelligent, he threw Ted off. Ted was like a fighter without a game plan, and it was very interesting TV. So
You're saying he has to be that way because of ratings. Do you see it as an act? Do you see it as kind of sometimes it's an act, but you enjoy it?
Eileen, the three
Come
of us,
over here to me.
the three
Yes.
of us are polite on camera, but off camera we're violent.
Oh, you're awful to each other. I saw it.
Disgusting.
Chuck, hold up your feet. Hold up your leg. You and Morton Downey with your red socks. Go ahead.
I would have to say that Mort is an act, but in all fairness, I have to say that Phil is an act and Oprah is an act. And Geraldo is definitely an act. He's quite an act. I don't think, especially Geraldo and Oprah do this out of any sense of social consciousness. I just think that they do it as business. It is business.
All right.
It's an act.
They were going, Duke, Duke, Duke. Did they get that from Mort, Mort, Mort? Well, you aren't here to defend yourself, Mort. It's not our fault. We enjoyed it without you.